Hi, this is BAE. I am doing a video response to Sensei Israel's video titled Spyderco Civilian Blade Arts Demonstration. I'm specifically dealing with the use of training knives being used before attempting the Sensei's techniques. A couple guys, talked about doing the technique, and a couple guys like Solar Effect questioned about using training knives. I was going to just write a quick comment, but I've decided to elaborate with some examples of training knives via a video. First off, I want to say do not attempt any live training until live knife training until A, you've done the technique slowly with a soft training knife at least 3,000 times without ever making a mistake. B, you should then follow that up with slow training while adding speed while still using a soft training knife until you can do the technique at top speed without any mistakes, again for 3,000 reps. This means if you make a mistake at 1,500 reps, just start from rep 1 again. Okay, now you want to follow that up. Step C would be to follow that up by doing it quickly with a solid training knife until you've done it 3,000 times without ever making a mistake. 3,000 times. Why 3,000 times? That's how long it takes to condition a reflex, to make a conditioned reflex. This means you don't have to think about it while you're doing other things. Like while you're breathing, you don't have to think about that if you're fighting. That's the way we want the knife technique to be, especially if you want to do it with a real knife later on. Okay, so then step D, you should then have a qualified, competent knife person, preferably like an instructor, critique your technique. I mean, you may be doing something in such a fashion that you don't realize from your angle, where somebody looking at it can see it in a different light and can tell you, be careful, do this, and now you want to go back to A, B, and C and get this technique to where it's a good quality technique. Now, if you've done all that and this instructor says, wow, your technique looks good, now you can consider going to a real knife. And I hope Sensei Israel will support me on that. This is what it takes, okay? And again, now that we're at that point, we're going to go through A through C with a real knife. So again, slow, speeding up, and then finally blasting away like Sensei Israel. Let's see. On to training knives. Okay, way back in 1982, excuse me, it was longer than that, back in 82, when I started doing some knife training, right away I wanted to practice on real people in realistic situations. In the school I was going to, it was Okinawan Kempo and Kabuto Dojo on a Marine Corps base. We used to use a knife like this during our self-defense training. And that's a traditional Japanese design. And it's good for what I call those bullcrap techniques where somebody comes down with one attack, you block, and then you take the guy down or you disarm him. It's nothing that you would do it doesn't relate to realistic, real life experiences because it's scripted. You know where the knife's coming, you know where you're going, and it guarantees a hero success, okay? Now sometimes they'll say, okay, is the guy going to come this way or this way? But again, it's one attack and the guy just stands still. It's not realistic. Okay, if you're looking for a more realistic training where you're actually fighting, then a knife like that is just going to beat the crap out of you. The slashes when they hit your wrist are going to damage your wrist. If you get thrust to the body or the face, it's not a sharp stick in the eye, but it's still too painful if you want to train, have a long training session. And again, an accidental solid thrust to the eye could actually disable you. It's just not what you want to use for that type of stuff. These wooden knives like that run about $4, okay? Because of the trouble of using these hard knives and getting injured, we quickly moved on to using rubber knives while we were training. So I'm going to show you a quick picture of a rubber knife that we used to use. And I don't think anybody really uses these anymore, although they do still sell them. Here is a rubber knife. There it is. These are soft. You can really go hard at each other. But right here, they're very weak in that area. And what winds up happening is after a few solid thrusts, it breaks. And all you've got left is a handle in your hand. And the knife is laying on the floor. So we used to go through these things pretty quickly. We started buying them in bulk. We'd buy for Marines on $300 a month pay. We'd buy 4, 5, 6 of them at the same time. It'd run us like 20 bucks. And then we'd use them until they broke, and we'd go buy some other ones. And of course, there'd be a downtime because you'd have to go. We didn't have the internet in those days, where you just go run down and boop, you order it, and it's coming to you. You have a credit card. Back in those days, we'd go to the post office. You'd have to get a money order. You'd mail this thing off, and 6 weeks later, you'd have your new knives. So you'd be out of business for like 6 weeks. Again, these type of knives are, they run about $5. You can still buy them today, $5, $6, etc. But again, they just don't hold up. It was about 1983 when I started training with a guy who was a Togakuri Ryu Ninjutsu student, and he introduced me to using a rubber hose as a training knife. These are outstanding. They just virtually last forever. Okay, they just don't break down. You just take a rubber hose. Here's what I still use today: rubber hose. You cut it to the length you want. You tape up each end so that any sharp little edges are not going to poke you in the eye. And you can just pound each other with this. It does hurt when you get hit, but it lasts forever, and it's not going to disable you like a wooden stick to the eye. Okay, so let's see. Nowadays, they also make these, Cold Steel makes a more solid rubber knife. So we're going to look at the rubber knives for a second here. But they make a more solid rubber knife. You can get them in blue gun version, red gun, orange gun versions from the police training outlets. And those type of knives run about $15, whereas a hose, go to your grandma's house and look in the shed. There's an old hose out there. Cut some chunks off it. I mean, you can just find this stuff. You don't even have to pay for it. Steal your neighbor's hose. Of course, I'm not advising that you actually steal your neighbor's hose. But let me see here for a second. Let me show you a picture of these new types of rubber knives, which I have not used. I have, however, seen a YouTube video of a guy with them, and they're pliable. They look like they're durable. The problem is the durability factor means that they're still made a little hard. I would not want to take one of these in the eye, even at like a 1/3 speed. Again, you could be disabled if one of those just jammed you right in the eye. So while it's a nice little training tool, it's not something you really want to bash hard with, and I would advise against that if you were doing actual combative type training with a knife, with a training knife. Okay, so let's see. Let's go on to this. Another thing we used to like to do was practice your angles, like you saw Sensei Israel doing. But you used to like to practice it on like a more solid object. And I went through K-bars after K-bars because they would break. I mean, we used to hit on trees, hit on 2x4s, that type of stuff. And never mind the damage you're doing to the edge and having to resharpen your knife, etc., etc. Going through stones, wet stones, with that type of stuff. And again, how ready is your knife going to be after a training session? I mean, if you didn't break it, you've definitely dulled the whole edge, and it's just it's not good. So to avoid using a real knife, what I started doing was I started using a wooden knife on like retread pieces of tire that you see on the side of the road. I mean, you can just hang them on a pole. You can hang them on a branch of a tree, and now you take your wooden knife and you just start beating away on that tire. And as you can see, I do use this knife for that. Got some rubber from the tires on there. And again, those knives are about $5. They'll last you a really, really, really long time, and you can just go through angle after angle on a tire, hanging off a tree. So it's pretty good for that. Let me see. Nowadays, though, what I really like to use are these aluminum training knives. You can get them in fixed blade, and you can even get them in folder versions. Okay, you can work on a heavy bag using them, or you can work on some old foam. You can also use these for self-defense techniques. They will hurt when you get hit. They could disable you if they hit you in the eye, so you have to be very, very careful with them. You want to be moving slow while you're doing that. I would not use these for anything over 50%. If I'm an experienced fighter, 50% speed, because, like I say, you can get hurt with these. But when you're working like arm, disarm, defanging the snake type techniques, They work great for that. You can wear a little foam pad on your arm. These type of knives run from $20 all the way up to the mid $100 range for those folders. They're nice, but I haven't picked one up yet. Okay, so anyways, here's what I like to use. This is I'm taking a guy through a class right now, and we've been using this foam for stabbing and slashing using the aluminum knife. Again, it gives you you get to use a realistic knife, okay, and you get to pound away on an actual target. And you can see we have to replace pieces of foam where we kind of beat through him. Head's kind of falling off. And you stab a piece enough, and then when it gets all torn out, you just put a new piece in. You can see we already went through that guy in the back, and then we put this new one on top. And I've actually got a new one hanging outside now. This guy's actually going to be retired. Give him a full pension. But anyways, again, just to look at the knives. $5, practice on a tire. Beat the heck out of it. The knife's going to last a long time. $20, beat on some foam, beat on a heavy bag, beat on your buddy's wrists. It's going to last virtually forever. A piece of hose, and for my son, you know, he's a kid, so I don't really want to beat on him too much. I might get in trouble for that. So I've taken some insulation, some pipe insulation. You just buy this down at Home Depot. Put this on the top of the hose, and now all of a sudden this becomes very soft. Doesn't bother you at all. You leave about an inch extending beyond the hose, so now you can put a really nice jab in the eye here, and it might get a little blurry for a second, but as you can see, you're going to survive that, no disability. Now, one thing, I'm a Filipino stylist. When it comes to knife fighting, similar to Sensei Israel, one of the things I like to do to help teach that 3-finger grip on the end is I will bring the foam down to where I can only fit 3 fingers on here. Now right away, it's helping me to instill in students that using the 3-finger grip instead of wanting to use more of a saber grip with these 2 other fingers here. I like to teach them modern Filipino grip, and that's one way that it kind of helps the students remember to not employ the index and thumb in controlling the knife. Another thing I like a lot is using these little smaller ones like this. Everybody likes to train with these big knives for some reason. I mean, you know, you got this big knife here. You've got these big long knives here. This is supposed to represent a folder. That's a big folder. A lot of people carry the smaller folders, so what I like to use a lot is this smaller version of the hosed training knife, because getting that small blade on somebody is a whole lot harder than it is getting this big blade on somebody. And believe me, if you can get this small blade on somebody, you are going to be tearing somebody up with this. Your slashes are going to be very deep, and your cuts, you're going to be using that whole blade. You're going to get through clothing, you're going to get to the bone, you're going to finish the fight. So again, little simple stuff like this. Find a hose. You don't have to use this stuff up here if you want to save some money. Just get a piece of a hose, pound the heck out of each other with that piece of hose. You might get some bruises, you might get a really sore eye, but you're going to be able to continue to train. And again, you can use these hoses on solid targets to just practice your all your different angles, that type of stuff here. All that you can do with one of those also, and they're virtually, I'm not going to say indestructible, but they're nearly indestructible. They last a long time. I've had these 2 hoses here for probably 5 years that I've been using those since I had to replace them. And I was lucky. I bought this house and there was just a hose out there, so I just chopped, boom, boom. When I bought the house, they left the old hose out there. I chopped that, and those were some new fresh training knives. So anyways, hope I haven't bored you. It's a long video. Thanks for watching. See you, Sensei.